What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to the CUFC YouTube channel. It is the Carlisle Catch Up. It's episode 8, and it has took an absolute age to make this video. But the timestamps are on your screen there for what's coming up in this video. We've got since the last time, what's next for Carlisle United, a timeline of events since the Piatak family have took over, looking at the squad, players that we would keep, players that we would move on, and look at some other news such as reported wages, and just other basic news around Carlisle United Football Club. But yeah, it's been a difficult season. I don't think anyone will disagree with that. Just before we get into this video, I do want to say that, of course, this is mainly my opinion. There is a lot of input from you guys as well, mainly from Instagram, looking at the squad and looking at the management structure. But what I would say is a lot of this is opinion-based. You guys might have a different opinion in the comments. That's absolutely fine. And some of this has been reported on from other sources, so it's not necessarily coming from myself. And I am fully aware that you don't always believe what you read on the internet. So, of course, some of the things that are said in this video will be linked in the description from outside sources. And it doesn't mean it is 100% fact. I am aware of that. Don't want to spread any sort of false information, but the information has been reported on from outside sources, so they are in the video. They will be linked in the description as well, so all the sources can be credited. But I am aware that you don't believe everything that you read on the internet. Just wanted to get that little disclaimer out there before we move on with the rest of the video. And I do also want to say that a lot of this in the video is talking about, things that went wrong, looking at certain things that haven't worked out at the club and everything like that. And, there is a air of negativity towards this video. Of course, we are bottom of the league. We are facing relegation into the National League with 5 EFL games to go. But I just wanted to say that, if anyone at the club is watching, or if any of the players are watching for whatever reason, that would be a bit bizarre. But anything said in the video is not a personal attack. It's never, ever personal towards anybody. It's just a matter of opinion or fact. Just to go completely off topic, I personally think Lionel Messi is the greatest player to ever play football. A lot of people think Ronaldo's the best player. That's just an opinion. That opinion can get argued. And that's all this is. It's just an opinion. It's a mix of my opinion. It's mainly my opinion. It's my channel where we talk about Carlisle United. But a lot of it is my opinion. There is a few parts that, as I say, have been from you guys, mainly on Instagram, voting on, what players you would keep, what players you would move on, the management structure and things like that. And there is a part where we will look at timeline events, and we do talk about the footballing side of the business, which has been an absolute disaster. Let's make no mistake about it. But it's never ever a personal attack on anybody at the club, or any players or anything like that. I just wanted to get that out there because I know some fans sometimes can take it a little bit too far, and things can get personal and it can get abusive and stuff like that. That's not what this is about. This is just people's opinion. Yeah, I just wanted to get that in there before we moved on with the video. The longest video ever on the CUFC YouTube channel as well, may I add. It's took an absolute age to make this video. So if you could like and subscribe, that would be greatly appreciated. But let's move on. What has happened since the last time we spoke on one of these catch-ups? Carlisle have played a numerous amount of games under their new head coach in Mark Hughes. Of course, on the 6th of February, Mark Hughes was appointed as the head coach of Carlisle United. Now, it hasn't been as rosy as people might have liked. We definitely haven't had that new manager bounce that other teams in the division have got. As you can see there, it started with a 2-1 defeat at Grimsby, a 1-0 against Newport, back-to-back 0-0 draws against Colchester and Gillingham, a 1-0 away win at Vale, a 1-1 against Walsall, a 1-0 defeat against Harrogate, a 2-1 defeat against AFC Wimbledon, a 2-1 win against Bromley, a 2-2 against MK Dons, a 3-0 defeat against Doncaster, a 2-1 against Chesterfield, and then fighting back for that 3-2 victory against Newport. Looking at the league table down there, Carlisle, of course, sit rock bottom of League 2 with 34 points, Morecambe with 36, and then the safety positions is Accrington in 22nd with 42, and Tranmere in 21st with 43 points. Now, looking at what's next for Carlisle United, we have 5 games left. 2 home, 3 away. 15 available points up for grabs. We take on 23rd place Morecambe away on Saturday, which will be a massive, massive game if we are to stand a chance at staying up. We then host Port Vale, who currently sit in second in the league, in a game that has discounted prices where it is £10 entry for that game. We then take the trip down to Accrington, who currently sit in 22nd in League 2. We then take the trip to Cheltenham, who currently sit 16th in League 2. And then we finish on the 3rd of May at Brunton Park against Salford, who sit 11th position at the time of recording. So, to be fair, if you look at them games, you can get something against Morecambe. If you put a decent performance in, you could get a point against Port Vale. You could get something down at Accrington. Cheltenham are there for the taking. And if it's still alive on that last game of the season, Brunton Park will be absolutely bouncing against Salford. So, in a way, it is doable. But also, you have to be realistic that, it would mean we have to win at least probably 4 of them games, if not 3 at the minimum. And that includes definitely beating Morecambe, definitely beating Accrington, and hoping that they can't pick up any more points during the course of the season. As you can see, there's 8 points in it at the moment. But them 8 points, if we beat Morecambe, we beat Accrington, then they lose 2 games. Then they lose their games as well. Then that point difference becomes 2 points with 2 games to go. So that is definitely more doable. But it does mean we have to pick up the points, which will be the most difficult part of that scenario if we're being serious. But there's still the slightest glimmer of hope, and it will be the greatest of great escapes if Carlisle could pull it off. Moving on then and looking at the timeline of Carlisle under our American owners since the takeover was complete. Now, just before we go into sort of the details here, I do want to say that there has been good as well. It's not all being negative. The football side has been absolutely terrible, yes. But the off-the-pitch stuff has been, near enough fantastic, near enough perfect. If you look at it, the takeover was complete. The debt was paid off. The new training facility, is starting to get up and running and everything. We've had various improvements across Brunton Park, including the hospitality boxes, the beer stalls and everything, the fan zone, the massive TV that shows events and stuff. And the business side of the club, I imagine, is doing a very, very successful, just being very successful. But the football side has been very, very different. But before we get into this timeline, I did just want to point out that there has been a lot of positiveness off the pitch. On the pitch, it's been a completely different story. And as well, just another thing on the sort of business side of the club and everything, and the money that's been pumped into the club. After Andrew Jenkins' funeral, after he sadly passed away, if he was still the majority owner of Carlisle United, would we even have a club anymore? I imagine we probably would have went bankrupt and we would have been in serious trouble. So, of course, you've got to take that in mind as well when we're talking about the American owners, Tom and the family. We probably don't have a club without them at the moment, even though, of course, it's not exactly ideal what's going on the pitch. But we have a club, and, unless they randomly decide to just cut rope and leave, we're not going to have any financial difficulty, I wouldn't say, with the owners. I mean, our wage budget could potentially be a lot less. But, I don't think we're going to go under or go bankrupt or anything anytime soon, which is obviously a massive relief and something that Carlisle have flirted with for a few years. But I do think we are still afloat because of Tom and the family. So, of course, that's got to be bearing in mind as well when you look at sort of this. And this is more a criticism of the footballing side of things. The business side, great. They are business people. I think you need someone who's going to come in who knows football, who knows the city, who knows the club, and he isn't going to just say yes to everything. He's going to give you an honest thing. I'd actually quite like to see Mark Hughes do sort of a Ralph Rangnick type of role, where he just sort of says, here's the problems, this, and this, and here's what you need to think, because, Mark Hughes probably knows exactly what's going wrong, and he's alluded to some things in his interviews. So I think you just need to get the football inside, bang on. You need to improve that football inside, get a proper footballing person into the club. But I did just want to make that statement as well before we move into this timeline. The takeover was complete on the 22nd of November 2023. Now, on the 9th of December 2023, Blackpool beat Carlisle in League One 3-0 in quite a limp performance from Carlisle United. And a performance where I think a lot of the fans thought that Paul Simpson's time as manager should come to an end. Obviously, as well, we're looking at all this with hindsight as well, don't get me wrong, I am aware of that. But a lot of people thought that was the time for Paul Simpson to go. Now, obviously, Tom and the family wanted to give Paul Simpson a chance for, the success he's brought to the club in the past. They wanted to give him an opportunity with the budget and everything. But if some of the things that have been sort of rumoured, which we'll get onto in the next part of the video, with Paul Simpson potentially looking to actually move into a sporting director role. Now, again, this is the outside sources. It's not necessarily confirmed that is true, but it does make it a very interesting situation if that was the plan, that Paul Simpson was to go upstairs during that League One campaign and prepare for, a potential survival in League One, but definitely, for this season in League Two to be a lot better. But anyway, that didn't happen. Paul Simpson did remain in charge for another six to 7 months. January 2024 saw the first transfer window under our ownership, where we brought in players Anton Dudek, Josh Vale, Harry Lewis, Luke Armstrong, George Kelly, Harrison Neal, Jack Diamond on loan, Sean Grennan on loan, and Josh Emmanuel came in a little bit earlier, potentially before the American takeover. I'm not exactly sure on the exact date that he came in, but we lost players, Owen Moxon, Joe Garner, Ryan Edmondson and Luke Plange's loan ended. Now, of course, apart from losing a world-class player in Luke Plange, it was a bit of an odd transfer window. I don't think a lot of people thought that it was going to be enough to keep us in League One. There wasn't a lot of League One experience in there. A lot of them transfers haven't worked out. Again, hindsight is a wonderful thing. Harrison Neal isn't with the club anymore. Luke Armstrong is away on loan. Georgie Kelly's just started to get fit fully. Josh Vella is a mainstay. Anton Dudek just hasn't been a first-team player at all. Harry Lewis is probably on his way out. And, of course, the other ones were loan deals. And Josh Emmanuel left at the end of the season anyway. So it wasn't the best transfer window when you look at it. Losing the likes of Owen Moxon, which, of course, Moxon's went on to have a very decent career after Carlisle United. Joe Garner was probably someone who was great to have around the dressing room. Ryan Edmondson wasn't a real loss in my opinion. And Luke Plange definitely wasn't a loss in my opinion. But the January transfer wasn't brilliant. You should have been bringing in League One experienced players if you were to stay up. But we didn't. It was a bit poor transfer window. Moving into March then, the 12th of March, the debt was agreed to be paid off, or has been paid off. And then moving on to the 6th of April, so just 4 months after that transfer window, well, 3 months if you're counting it as the end of the transfer window, Northampton beat Carlisle 2-0 to confirm our relegation to Sky Bet League 2 for the following season. Not ideal, but it was coming. A stronger January transfer window could have helped that. But as we said, it was going to be a difficult task. We weren't prepared for that League One campaign at all. But then moving into the summer of August 2024, where one of the footballing decisions was definitely wrong. Paul Simpson was given that summer transfer window, and I understand the logic behind that. They wanted to give him that opportunity. They wanted him to spend some money. They wanted him to make a team. But for him be relieved of his duties 1 day after the transfer window had ended was absolutely abysmal. Terrible timing of that sacking. You can't give a manager to sign 11, 12 players and then get rid of him a day later. Now, looking at a lot of them players that Paul Simpson did sign, a lot of them are our mainstays in the team at the moment. You're looking at Archie Davis, Cameron Harper, normally in that starting 11. Jordan Jones, when he's fit, in that starting 11. Terrell Thomas is in that starting 11. So actually, my point's a bit rubbish there, because only about 4 of them are in that starting 11. But Archie Davis, Cameron Harper, Jordan Jones, Ethan Robson, who's went out on loan. Ben Williams is no longer with the club. Charlie White, unfortunately, is injured. Terrell Thomas, Aaron Hayden, Jude Smith. I guarantee if you seen Jude Smith on a match day, you wouldn't know who he was. Harrison Biggins' loan deal has ended. Dan Adjuajay and Dom Sadie, both of them went back to Bournemouth as well. I think Dominic said he was a fantastic little player who's got a bright future ahead of him. And Tyler Berry was relieved of his duties in January as well. But, we are continually playing 4-5 of them players, when they're fit. But again, you're giving someone the transfer window just to get rid of them is absolutely bizarre. And we lost players, Jordan Gibson, Josh Emmanuel, Sean Maguire, Max Kilby, Corey Whelan, Kai Nugent, Dan Butterworth, Alfie McCalmont, Thomas Hawley and Paul Huntington. Now, Paul Huntington's obviously doing a fantastic job up at Bradford at the moment, top of the league. But you're losing, a couple of players there that have been a key part of that promotion season. Jordan Gibson, Thomas Hawley, Paul Huntington, and even include Alfie McCalmont in that promotion season as well. But, the likes of Huntington, Hawley, Gibson, they're a big part of that dressing room, alongside Owen Moxon, of course, who left earlier in January. And you're losing them sort of characters and stuff, which is needed in any footballing dressing room. So I think in hindsight, summer window wasn't terrible, but they could have been a lot better. And I think, again, we're talking hindsight here. But if Paul Simpson, stays at the club, a lot of them players probably are still getting played. Ethan Robson probably is in there. Ben Williams is in there. Harrison Biggins, loan deal, etc., etc. But I think it's bizarre, as anybody, it's bizarre to give someone the transfer window to relieve them of the duties one day later. Now, of course, in the summer, we did have a lot of improvements at Frunton Park, including the hospitality sections. So a positive there. But 30th of August, the summer transfer window closed. The 31st of August, Paul Simpson leaves Carlisle United. It is baffling. It is absolutely baffling when you look at it like that. It's just a crazy footballer decision, and unfortunately a footballer decision that was compounded when the feat was repeated later on in this season. But Paul Simpson left, leaving Jamie Deverton Court in charge for a few match days. And then on the 19th of September, Carlisle United appoint Mike Williamson as their new head coach. And it was meant to be a fast, fun, attacking style of football that people could get behind. It really, really did not end up being that, did it? But Mike Williamson was then apparently on the board in the interview, who then hired Rob Clarkson as sporting director on the 31st of October 2024, which is another bizarre decision. Why would someone be on the board for an interview panel when it is their own boss that they are hiring? But again, another footballing decision that's possibly not worked out. Rob Clarkson has been said to have overseen the January transfer window. I don't necessarily think that is 100% true. That is just my opinion. A lot of them players that came in January have a direct link to Mike Williamson, and I find it a bit bizarre that Rob Clarkson will, if it's him making the decision, if it's him signing quote-unquote Carlisle United players, then I don't think a lot of them players really actually signed for Carlisle without Mike Williamson being the head coach, if I'm being honest. But, if that's what's being said, that Rob Clarkson is the lead of that January transfer window, then Rob Clarkson is the lead of that transfer window. But in my opinion, I don't believe that to be 100% correct, if I'm being honest. But on Boxing Day, Carlisle 0, Morecambe 1. Fans started to sour on Mike Williamson. I think fans started to sort of see that this project isn't working. It's been said many times, but to go from Paul Simpson's style of play to Mike Williamson's tiki-taka, fast philosophy was never going to work overnight, and it's never going to work with a team that was sat in 20th in League 2 after a disastrous season in League 1, who have no confidence whatsoever. It was never going to work. That takes a year, 2 years, 18 months at least to start to come into play. It was never going to happen overnight, as you know, it seemed to be that's what they wanted. It was never going to work, unfortunately. But fans did start to sour on Mike Williamson on that 26th of December 2024, leading into the transfer window of January. So looking at the January transfer window, then the 31st of January is when the transfer window closed. We lost Tyler Berry and Ben Williams. I don't think either of them were massively going to make a difference, to be fair, in our season. But looking at the transfer window, again, you're looking at hindsight. A lot of them transfers have not worked out. Paul Dummett played about 1 minute of football at Fleetwood. Probably didn't work out. But again, going back to that link of Mike Williamson players, him and Paul Dummett are mates. Does Rob Clarkson, is he the one who's pushing for that transfer? But again, that's my opinion. But yeah, Paul Dummett, Will Patchin, Stephen Wern, Elliot Embleton, Josh Williams, Kenwyn Scott, Callum Whelan, Joe Hugel, Sean Fasaya, Charlie MacArthur, Joe Bevan, Kadeem Harris signed on a longer-term deal, and Matty Dennis came in technically under Mark Hughes. Matty Dennis came in, but he was training with the club from Mike Williamson. Now, just looking there, back to my point about Rob Clarkson. Now, this, again, is just my opinion. But Paul Dummett, Stephen Wern, Josh Williams, Kenwyn Scott, Callum Whelan, Charlie MacArthur, Matty Dennis, 7 of them 11 players have direct links to Mike Williamson. Now, tell me that Rob Clarkson made all them signings, because I don't think he did, to be honest. But if you look at it, Stephen Wern, I think is a good signing for us. Callum Whelan's been good for us. Joe Hugel, I think when he gets the opportunity, can put the ball in the back of the net, but it's the same issues that we had with Luke Armstrong. The service just isn't there all the time. Sean Fasiyas came into his own, but more in the last couple of weeks under Mark Hughes, never really under Mike Williamson. And I think Charlie MacArthur is, of course, I think he has something with him there, being the Scottish international player for Newcastle as well. Kadeem Harris technically was a contract extension. But again, he's been a quality player for us. Even if his goals and assists don't necessarily project that all the time, he is one of our best players for sure, and I don't think he'll struggle to get a club in League 2 either. And then you've got Matty Dennis, who's been scoring goals in the last few weeks, but again, he hasn't been exactly setting the world on fire. And then you've got the likes of Paul Dummett, who's injured, to probably won't see him again. Will Patchin disappeared off the face of the earth. Elliot Embleton, well, I think you all know how people feel about Elliot Embleton. Josh Williams, again, injured. Kenwyn Scott apparently has a bad attitude, so he hasn't been playing for us. And Joe Bevan, which I feel a bit for Joe Bevan, because he came in as sort of supposed to be the striker who was going to save our season, but that was never ever going to be the thing, was it? Very inexperienced at this level. But Carlisle took the trip to Prenton Park on the 4th of January. Tranmere 1, Carlisle United 0, and them away fans, and I was there, them away fans were chanting very clearly, "You're getting sacked in the morning," towards Mike Williamson. Now, when have you ever heard your own fans chanting, "You're getting sacked in the morning" at your own manager? That is absolutely, it's ridiculous that that's happened, hasn't it? But it did. On the 11th of January, we had the fans forum where, Mike Williamson did come across quite well, although unfortunately that didn't change anything on the pitch. And I do think one of the things with the fans forum was the right questions weren't being asked at the time. I think it should have been a lot more, do we understand this situation that we are in? And a lot more to the point. I think there was one fan that said that I find your style of play boring. That was about as tough as he got for Mike Williamson on that day. But the January transfer window ended on the 31st of January. And what do we do 3 days later? That's right, we sack Mike Williamson. It was bizarre when it happened with Paul Simpson. It's even worse when you make the same mistake twice. You've signed 11 players in January to fit the Mike Williamson system. You know, a lot of the thing was, give Williamson a transfer window to get his players in and it will be different. It wasn't different. It was probably worse. And now we've got 11 players. A few of them are on loan, yes, but we've got 6-7 players on permanent contracts for years that, just haven't been good enough, not to personally get at Elliot Embleton, but, a 3.5-year deal. And what has he offered the club? Nothing at the minute. But again, the footballing decision there, ridiculous to sack him directly after that transfer window. Again, same mistakes year after year, which has unfortunately left us at the moment bottom of the EFL. On the 6th of February, as we discussed, we did sign Mark Hughes as our head coach. Hasn't really been much difference, let's be honest. Our home form is a lot better. But our overall standing, we haven't got a new manager bounce. We're playing slightly better football, but that wasn't a very high bar to have. And as I say, as of today, the 7th of April, we do sit 92nd of 92nd in the EFL, facing back-to-back National League relegation. Back-to-back relegations, this time relegation to the National League, which is absolutely crazy to think about. But that is a sort of timeline of thing. And as I say, not everything's been bad. The business decisions have been good, but the football decisions have been absolutely woeful. And this section has lasted over 17 minutes, which is absolutely crazy. So let's move on then to the squad and our opinions on the squad. So looking at the squad then, and this is what it looks like. And you do have a couple of colours on your screen there. So if you've got a pinky purple asterisk, that is a loan player. If they have got 2 asterisks and a yellow, that is an out of contract player. And then 3 asterisks with a blue colour, that is a player out of contract with an option to extend. Now, I know how contracts work. So before we get on to the next part, and you've got people that are under contract that we're saying we should move on, I'm fully aware how contracts work, and you cannot release a player under contract unless you agree terms about that. I am fully aware of that, just before we get into that bit. But looking at the team then, so players that we will still have next season under contract: Harry Lewis, Jude Smith, Gabe Breeze, Archie Davis, Cameron Harper, Terrell Thomas, Aaron Hayden, Josh Williams, Ethan Robson, John Jones, Taylor Charters, Stephen Wern, Will Patchin, Callum Whelan, Elliot Embleton, Georgie Kelly, Charlie Wyke, Caden Scott, Luke Armstrong. They are the people we will have under contract next year. Players that are out of contract, we've got Sam Lavelle, Paul Dummett, Ben Barkley, Anton Dudek, Matthew Dennis, Kadeem Harris and Dylan McGeoch. And then people that are out of contract with an option are Jack Ellis, Callum Guy and Josh Vella. And of course the loan players, Charlie MacArthur, Joseph Bevan, Joe Hugel and Sean Fasai will be leaving the club as they are only on loan. So that is what our squad is looking like. It is a very, very large squad that we will be taking with us into the National League at the current moment in time. But looking at what you guys had said, who you would keep and who you would leave. Now, these were on average of around 125 votes on average. So the people that you would keep: Gabe Breeze, Archie Davis, Cameron Harper, Terrell Thomas, Sam Lavelle, Stephen Wern, Kadeem Harris, Callum Whelan, Charlie Wyke, Kenwyn Scott, Luke Armstrong and Josh Williams. They are the players that you would keep in that squad for next season. Taylor Charters was a 50-50 split between stay or go, so he's just in the middle there. And you would have a large clear out of players like Harry Lewis, Jude Smith, Aaron Hayden, Paul Dummett, Jack Ellis, Ben Barkley, Ethan Robson, Callum Guy, Jordan Jones, Josh Vella, Dylan McGeoch, Will Patchin, Elliot Embleton, Georgie Kelly, Matthew Dennis and Anton Dudek. So you guys are keeping 11 players with Taylor Charters in that sort of 50-50 region. I can understand the players that you kept. I can understand the players that you want to get rid of. But I think it's outstanding that there is that many players that we would want to get rid of in the team. And you got some big names in there. You got Jordan Jones, who had a massive pedigree coming into the club. You've got Matthew Dennis who started picking up goals. You've got Callum Guy, who's been here for a long time, although he's out of contract. You got young players like Jack Ellis, Anton Dudek that you were moving on as well. It would leave us with one goalkeeper in Gabe Rees as well, so we need to definitely sign a goalkeeper. But I am exactly the same as you in the goalkeeper front. I have kept Gabe Rees only as goalkeepers. I have also kept Archie Davis, Cameron Harper, Stephen Wern, Callum Whelan, Charlie Wyke, Taylor Charters, Will Patchin, Aaron Hayden and Terrell Thomas. Now, players that I would let go or try and move on, I've got Harry Lewis, Jude Smith, Sam Lavelle, Caden Scott, Kadeem Harris, Paul Dummett, Jack Ellis, Josh Williams, Ben Barkley, Ethan Robson, Callum Guy, John Jones, Josh Vella, Dylan McGeoch, Elliot Embleton, George Kelly, Anton Dudek, Luke Armstrong and Matty Dennis. Now, I personally think Gabe Rees is in likelihoods could get a move elsewhere after the season he's had, sort of the back end of the season. I think Archie Davis has really got something. Unfortunately, he is currently injured. I think Cameron Harper needs to just adapt a little bit more to English football. He does sort of shy away from a tackle every now and again, but I do think there's something in Cameron Harper if he could just sort of, adapt into English football a little bit better. Stephen Wern, I'm a big fan of. I think he's been absolutely fantastic since coming in, and he can play multiple array of positions, which I think is brilliant. Callum Whelan was heavily sought after at National League level, so I think he will be a fantastic addition and probably one of the first names on the team sheet for me. Charlie Wyke, I think when he's fit, he would be a great player, especially if we are in the National League. I think that would suit him very well. It's slightly slower of a tempo. He's a big physical player and he knows where the back of the net is. Taylor Charters, I think, would offer us a lot of versatility. As he can play, again, an array of positions. He can play sort of attacking midfield, defensive midfield. He can even play as a fullback as well. So I think Taylor Charters gives us them options. And it would be good to see a local lad stay in the team. Will Patchin, I think if he can get up to speed and get his fitness sorted, he's a towering midfielder. He's big, he's strong. He's got that physicality. He just needs to be a little bit more match fit for me. Aaron Hayden, I think he's shown, he hasn't done a lot this season for us, absolutely. I think with Sam Lavelle being out of contract, I don't see Sam Lavelle renewing his contract with Carlisle, to be honest. I think Aaron Hayden would be, if Hayden and Thomas stayed, I think they would be my solid back two. I think Aaron Hayden has shown that he can do it at the National League level. When he was at Wrexham, he scored like 16 goals or something, didn't he, from corners? So I think he will be a great leader to have. And I think when you look at the team that we got promotion with, we had a spine of a team now. I think, if you've got Gabe Rees, Aaron Hayden, Callum Whelan and Charlie Wyke, there's your spine of the team for me, that would hopefully bring us back into the EFL. And then I have kept Terrell Thomas. I think, understandably, sometimes he hasn't been at his best, but I think he's a very good defender. That's if he stays. I maybe think another club maybe looking at him and wanting him, because I don't think he's had a terrible season, just a few mistakes here and there. So that's my stay and go. If, of course, you guys voted on Instagram, but if you didn't get a vote, do you disagree or agree with any of these? Let me know in the comments down below. Of course, I've been a bit more ruthless with my getting rid of. I think Kadeem Harris, I would keep Kadeem Harris, but I don't think Kadeem Harris is sticking about. I think he's earned a contract elsewhere, to be perfectly honest. I could see him at MK Dons or somewhere like that, to be fair. Kenwyn Scott is maybe another controversial one. I just don't think I've seen enough of him. Yes, he's very good at the National League level, but I haven't really seen him feature in the Carlisle shirt, to be honest. And then I think the rest of them are pretty much just maybe Luke Armstrong. People might be thinking that. I think Luke Armstrong's away if he gets the opportunity, to be honest. And I think Matthew Dennis, although he scored a few goals recently, I do think he also has an opportunity probably to go somewhere else in this division. Now, looking at the management structure then, this was voted on by you guys again. Not as many votes on this one because you did actually have to message me and tell me who you would like as the manager. But looking there, Rob Clarkson, 33% of you said you would keep, and 67% said you would remove from his position. Now, a few people with Rob Clarkson, to be fair, said you would like to see someone come in alongside him, to show him the ropes and get him a little bit more confident in the role and stuff like that, because he hasn't done the role in the past. Nigel Clibbins, 16% said to keep, and 84% said out. And then Mark Hughes, 81% said in, and 19% said out. But I do want to reiterate that Mark Hughes one was done about 3 weeks ago, so things could have changed before then, after then. But a lot of you would keep Mark Hughes. Personally, I wouldn't. I think that his personality is great and he gets the fans on side and everything, but I don't think we've seen a massive improvement since he came in. And if we are to go down to the National League, then I would say that we need a National League specialist to get us out of the division instead of somebody who's never been in the National League before. That's just my opinion. But on asking you guys, who would you like to see if Mark Hughes doesn't stick about? There was one vote apiece for Mike Williamson. I really hope that one was a joke. We got Phil Parkinson from Wrexham, Stephen Gerrard, Peter Murphy and Danny Granger. On 2 votes apiece, we got Stephen Cockrell, Simon Weaver, Ian Holloway, John Coleman and Darryl Clark. On 3 votes, we got Scott Lindsay. I think he'd just been sacked by MK Dons at that point. He has, of course, got the Crawley job since. Rob Elliott got 4 votes. John Brady got 5 votes. That would be my pick if John Brady was interested. I would like to see John Brady as Carlisle manager, to be honest. Keith Curl got 11 votes. And ironically enough, that man, of course, Paul Simpson, got the most votes with 14 votes there for Paul Simpson, as voted on by you guys. As I just said, though, I would quite like John Brady, to be honest. I think John Brady has done it at the National League before. He's done it at League 2 before. He has a really good connection with the fan base, and I think he will be able to give us a sense of togetherness. But of course, that's if John Brady would be interested in the job. But yeah, that is the management structure. But moving on to something that was said on BBC Radio Cumbria a few weeks ago. I'm just going to play you a clip from the Carlisle Social Season 2, Episode 36. Again, this will be linked in the description for you guys, so you could listen to this in full yourself. But I've took a clip from this, and all copyright, of course, to the BBC. Please do not strike me with a copyright strike for this. But this is what Chris Lumsden had to say on the Carlisle Social.
So Simo was assembling a squad. And then, how many games did he have? 4?
Well, can I say something on the Simo thing? He was meant to go upstairs. That was the agreement. He offered to go upstairs in the League 1 league.
During the season?
During the season.
Right.
He said, right, I think it's time. You know what? We were behind the time, getting promoted. We didn't have the money in the coffers because the takeover hadn't went through. It's going to be a tough task. Why don't we start planning for next season? We get the manager in place, and we think League 2. I know that's negative in a way. If we stay up, great, but let's that.
So Simo was going to become a sporting director.
That was the plan. So I'm led to believe by a few people within the club. So then they go, no, let's get to the end of the season. Right. Again, Simo, the end of the season, right. I think we should have done it before, but let's now get things in place. Because Simo was thinking ahead during the season. Let's get the manager in place for pre-season. They said, please take it over first few games of the season, up to 10 games, and we'll get it all sorted. So then he goes in with it, and he's probably thinking himself, like, there's going to be a new manager coming in, and that's when they're saying, sign him. And the players that they're looking for are just not in our budget. So there's a lot of misunderstanding there. So Simo's kind of running the club and the team. And then after the 10 games, whatever, it's sacked and completely out the club. So I think that's where maybe this is disillusioning around the club. Do you know what I mean? And then you've got, as it turns out, Nigel Clibbin signing players off, signing your Kelly, pushing for Kelly to be signed. Discussions about, this injury record. No, we need him. Go ahead. So the family saying, go and sign this, go and sign that, pay that money. But it's going to disrupt the whole dressing room if someone's on 10 grand a week in League Two. It's going to cost you in the long run. So I just feel that's other mistakes made. Probably Simo would have been perfect in that position.
You would have thought so.
I don't think so.
No, that's fair enough.
I don't think so.
I think that's what I thought.
I don't think any one manager coming in would want Simo looming over them, because the moment it started to struggle, fans would be calling.
So that piece is what I was alluding to early in the video from outside sources. There is a couple more in this video, but this came on the Carlisle social episode. Now, I just found it very interesting that I haven't really seen this being spoke about anywhere. Now, of course, it's not nailed on concrete evidence that it is correct, but if Simpson was meant to go into that sort of sporting director role, how different could things have looked? Somebody who's from Carlisle, somebody who cares about the club, somebody who has that position who knows, certain agents, obviously very close with Derby County, Manchester City, the England setup and everything like that. It could have been a really good idea for someone like Paul Simpson to become a sporting director, especially if a club like Carlisle United. And there's a lot of talk about people saying that Keith Kirk will come in and do it because he's been a player, he's been a manager, he's been an agent and everything like that. But Paul Simpson's done that all as well. And I just thought it was interesting to share that little bit from the Carlisle social, because it's somebody who really would understand the club, understand what makes the club tick, understand what the fans want and everything like that. And I just thought it was interesting, especially if that was proposed midway through that League One season, and then obviously we would have then prepared potentially better for the long run, sort of for this League Two season. And who knows where we could have been. Again, hindsight is a wonderful thing, but I just thought that point was very what am I trying to say? It was sort of underspoken about, that potentially Paul Simpson could have got that sort of role for the sporting director, and how differently things might have looked if Simpson took over that role in that League One season, and got a manager in place earlier and built a team around that manager a little bit earlier instead of sort of the panic buying in the summer, in January, and then being left with Mark Hughes having two separate sort of squads, so to speak. But moving on anyway, as I say, that's not concrete evidence that is, correct. But, I just thought it was a point worth mentioning because I thought Paul Simpson would have been fantastic in a job role like that. And I did just find that interesting. But as you can see there from the annual accounts, moving into the next section, Carlisle United have made a profit this year over tax. Now, I'm not going to go through every single figure on there, so I'll let you guys read that. And again, this is linked in the description. It is on the club website. I imagine quite a lot of you have probably already read this, but the club have made a profit, which is absolutely fantastic to hear. I don't think it's going to be the same for the 2024-25 accounts, but for now, we made a profit. This is looking at the 2023-24 season, of course. Now, again, there is a letter there from Tom, our chairman, signed on the 26th of March. And he said, I would like to thank all fans, businesses, community who have supported the club, its players, its staff in the first year of the new ownership. It's been a privilege to lead this incredible club in the first year. And as I reflect on all we have achieved together, I am filled with immense pride, gratitude, excitement for what lies ahead. I'll let you read the rest of it on there. Again, it is linked in the description, but I will keep that there on your screen if you want to pause it and read that for yourself. But I'm not going to read all of that. But he does say this is only the beginning. The future of Carlisle United Football Club is is incredibly bright, and he could not be more excited for the journey ahead. Now, I really hope the future is bright, and I hope it brightens up very quickly, because at the minute it hasn't been very bright at all under the ownership of our American owners. Again, that footballing side has really let them down. But you know, I think their heart's in the right place. It's just a case of having that footballing body to come and tell them yes, no, you know, a little bit more often, whoever that may be. But something I think definitely needs to be improved, as you can see in this next section, is the reported wages. Now, again, these are reported. It might not be 100% correct. This is looking at the Capology website, again fully linked in the description for you guys to read yourself, and I really hope that these are not the actual figures, because Carlisle United's gross pay per year is £5.4 million. What? £5.4 million to be bottom of the EFL, and our weekly gross pay is £104,000, which is not sustainable at all at the level that we are playing at, and that doesn't even include bonuses. So that is a staggering feat of money there from Carlisle United. Craziness if that is the actual figures. But as I say, it's an outside source, it's not guaranteed, so you know, take that with a pinch of salt, and it is linked in the description if you would like to read on that. But coming to a close then with some other news surrounding Carlisle United. This has been a very, very long episode, and I appreciate if anybody has watched all this way. If you have, craziness, but thank you so much. But anyway, looking at some other news, the Vale game on Easter Saturday is £10 a ticket, £5 for under 18s, and free if you are under the age of 7. So a great ticket deal there from Carlisle United during the Easter half term. However, unfortunately, if we do lose to Morecambe at the weekend, I think it is very misplaced. But I can understand why they're doing it. £10 for adults, £5 for under 18s for the Port Vale game on Easter Saturday. The UCL will be live in the Cumbrian Lounge if you want to go head down to Brunton Park and watch the quarterfinals of the Champions League this week. And Ethan Robson joined Gateshead on loan and scored on his debut as well. Of course he did. But Ethan Robson moving to Gateshead on loan for the remainder of the season. And finishing with Craig David bringing his TS5 show, the Carlisle Weekender, at Brunton Park. This will be Friday the 6th of June, and it will be the debut day of Carlisle United's Brunton Park Carlisle Weekend, featuring Craig David, Sigala and Wes Nelson, who will be performing at Brunton Park. Now, I will say, I've never seen Craig David, but I've seen Sigala twice. And Sigala, very, very good DJ, a very good time. But yeah, Carlisle capitalising on the stadium, capitalising to get some people back into the stadium, you know, making money on the off season as well, which is great. Again, from a business standpoint, I know a lot of people were joking that, you know, we're bottom of the league, you know, do we really want a relegation sort of party? But I think it's great that we're using Brunton Park's facilities to earn money even when the players are not playing. And if our wage bill is 5.5 million, then Christ, we need to definitely be using Brunton Park to all of its abilities. But yes, thank you so much for watching this video. It has been an exceptionally long one, and I appreciate if any of you have watched the entire video. I've recorded it in parts because it has been that long, which is not something that I normally do, but it has been an absolute journey to make this video. It's took ages to edit and put together, so a like and a subscribe and a comment to hear your guys' opinions would be greatly appreciated. But it has genuinely took me about 2 weeks to do this video. It's been an absolute minefield. So yeah, but thank you again for all of your support. Any support, whatever that may be, whether it, you know, it's a watch, it's a like, it's a comment, it's a subscribe, whatever it is, I appreciate you guys. And fingers crossed, Carlisle United, with 5 games to go, can put in the greatest of great escapes and we can keep our EFL status. But if not, it will be the National League and we will hopefully be back soon. But thank you so much for watching this video. I will see you in that away end in Morecambe, where hopefully it is 3 more points for the Blues. Thank you so much for watching. I have been CUFC, and I'll see you in the next one.